It is not a surprise that API come in different shapes and forms. gRPC is a remote procedure call framework initially developed by Google around 2015. And it has seen growing adoption in recent years based on HTTP2 protocol for transport and using Protobuf as the interface definition language. gRPC has several capabilities that traditional REST APIs struggle with, such as bidirectional streaming and efficient binary encoding. I'm Victor Gamov with Kong, and in this video, I'll explain how to deploy gRPC service to Kubernetes and provide external access to this service using Kong Ingress controller. Let's get to it. Kong supports TCP streams since version 1.0 and can proxy any protocol built on top of the TCP or TLS. But we felt that native support for gRPC would allow growing user base to leverage Kong to manage their REST, GraphQL, and gRPC services uniformly. Sounds nice. And to hype you up a little bit about upcoming live-action movie Dune, based on Frank Herbert's book Dune, arguably one of the most outstanding science fiction books ever written. Write down in the comments if you agree with me. I created service or version of my service that delivers some of the Dune quotes via gRPC service. Let's take a look at the Protobuf definition of this service. As you can see here, my Protobuf definition contains only one service, quote service, and it has two methods. One method is deliver just a simple quote on any request. It doesn't require any input parameters, so that's why we're going to be using Protobuf empty type, and as a return it will have a quote message that will include message field. And another method that I have here is a get quote stream method that also doesn't require any parameters to provide, so in this case I also use an empty type, but in this case I'm returning stream of these results. I'm using Java to generate server-side implementation of the service. However, you can take this Protobuf file and implement this service in any language that you're using. Protobuf comes with a variety of tools in a different language, including some code generators that support your language of choice. Next, let's take a look on my deployment. It is nothing very specific here about Kong or about gRPC here. As you can see, it's same image that I'm using, but a new version, a reactive quote service that will be using version 3. One of the services that my application will be running is the gRPC server that will be running on the port 9001, and this port will be available to service to expose this inside my Kubernetes cluster. Some of the parameters that I also want to provide here is that my gRPC service has security enabled, and I do provide some certificates in the server private key. In this example, I'm using self-signed certificate, but in your production use case, you need to use certificate that will be signed by a certification authority that you trust. I created the secrets, and after that I mount those secrets as files in my deployment. Next thing is that I have defined service that shows that I will be using port 9001 as my target port. Pay attention to line number 6, where I have this annotation konghq.com/protocols. It will respond to gRPCS protocol because my service has a security enabled, and I need to notify my Kong gateway that my service understands gRPCS protocol. And last but not least, I need to create Ingress. You see some of the familiar things like Ingress class that corresponds to Kong Ingress controller. Now I also have here annotations says konghq.com/protocols. It is Ingress configuration that allows to Kong gateway to understand what kind of incoming clients we're expecting. So in this case, we're creating this ingress for gRPCs because we're expecting gRPC clients to connect to the service. We're using gRPC or gRPCS protocols. My cluster is configured to use cert-manager. I will be using certificates that will be issued by Let's Encrypt. Let me show you how you can configure Kong Ingress controller. In our documentation, there is a getting started guide. Find the link in the description that allows you to configure your Kong Ingress controller and your Kong gateway to use automatically issued certificates for TLS. There's instruction how you can install this. I already done this. I installed the Ingress controller. We've seen this multiple times in these videos. Next thing is that you need to follow documentation of cert-manager. Essentially, it's one command that you need to execute to create the cert-manager. After done this, you will be able to request this certificate from certification authority. And after that, the application will be able to use port 443 TLS port to communicate with external clients. And that's why I have here this annotation kubernetes.io/TLS Acme to use automatic certificate management extension enabled for my cluster. And I'm using Let's Encrypt server production version to receive the certificate. So next thing is that in my configuration of my ingress, I need to specify that I'm using TLS for my ingress, and I issue certificate for this domain name. This domain name is correspond to external IP address that my conf ingress has. So let me remind you how it looks like. This is my external IP address that was provided by Google Cloud Platform, and I registered this IP address with my domain name. So my domain name conf-dev will correspond to this IP address. And next thing is that it's just the same configuration rules for the particular path. So my default path will correspond to my Dune Quote Service. Once again, inbound traffic will listen gRPC or gRPCS protocols, and between my conf gateway and my service, they will be using also gRPCS protocol because my service is deployed using gRPCS. Let's deploy this. So I'm starting deployment here. Let's do describe deployment service. As you can see here, a couple things are missing. So I do have 2 secrets that I need to provide, and I can do this with this small script that you can also find here. It generates self-signed certificate, and after that applies this certificate and key as my secrets. Now I need to do allowed restart deployment. So it will restart my deployment and bring my service up. And as I can see, my service is up and running right now. So I can use Insomnia to hit the service. So first thing that I need to do is to pick up my protofile. And I already have this configured, but you can add this protofile here. And I will see that 2 methods will be available, getQuote and getQuoteStream. So first thing that I will be hitting getQuote. Also, please notice here that I'm using gRPCS protocol. This is my Kubernetes cluster, and I'm using port 443 for TLS. And now I'm getting some quotes for Dune. And as you can see, one of the characters, Dr. Yui, was known as a traitor. Some of the information about his involvement with other characters. It works. So now let's try if streaming works. So I'm switching to Get Quote Service Stream, and I click Start. And now my response actually contains 10 responses. All these things that come in from the server go in here. And my implementation actually has implementation of some sort of interceptor that will log all the calls when someone is calling these calls. So my get quote was called multiple times, and my get quote stream also was called multiple times. And that was it for today. In this video, I showed you how to deploy gRPC service to Kubernetes and expose it to outside of the cluster using conf ingress controllers. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel, hit this like button, and comment below what are your use cases you're trying to implement in Kubernetes and how the conf gateway and how conf ingress control can help you. And with this, my name is Viktor Gamov, and as always, have a nice day.